This is the Segovia Show.
All right, Jerry, so we are rolling. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Segovia Show. I am your host, Segovia. Today, I'm joined by a special guest. Not only does she have an interesting story to tell, but she's also someone I know personally. So I want to welcome to the show, Charity Harkins. Charity, introduce yourself to those who may not know you.
Hey, my name is Charity Harkins, and I live in Wyoming, which is kind of a unique trait of mine because there aren't many of us here. But I am a mom of two boys. I've been married to my husband, Shane, for going on 16 years this summer. Together, we have a private practice in counseling. He's the counselor, and I do all of the back-end insurance, billing, bookwork type, keep it running. And so he started that practice about 8 years ago, and we just kind of run that together and have a couple employees that are counselors as well. So on top of that, I just started this new adventure as a faster way to fat loss coach, and it's been quite fun already. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay, so if I heard you right, you just say, how long did you say you were married for?
16 years. This July will be 16.
Yeah, that's not sitting too well with me right now.
I know.
16 years? Holy smokes.
Well, I was thinking about how long I've known you, and I probably met you in the year 2000 is my guess.
Like that, yeah.
And
I think it was in 10th grade, I think, yeah. I
think my sister met you the year before I met you because she came to California the year before I ever did. So we've been friends for 22 years. Does that help?
I know. Let that sink in. That is crazy.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Because when you say 16 years, I'm actually on the cusp of 12 as we record this interview.
Yeah.
So I'm about to hit 12 years married myself. Today, when we record this, though, Cinco de Mayo, it means nothing to me since I'm not Mexican. But what's significant about it, it's the day that my wife agreed to be my girlfriend. So that was 14 years ago. So 14 years together, 12 years married.
Cool. Yeah. When we hit 13 and it was like, our marriage is a teenager now, that was kind of a big number to become your marriage as a teenager you'll hit a big one.
Yeah. It's still, that's 16 years. Wow. Awesome. And I didn't know. Well, I'm assuming that the faster way thing, is this an extension of what you do with Shane, or?
Nope, it's separate. Yeah.
Oh, it's separate. Okay.
Shane is a licensed clinical social worker, and so he is a full-time clinical counselor. And then he started out on his own just before our second son was born. So, and he's 7.5. So yeah, it's a wild ride, but we've been growing, and he stays very busy. He's an excellent therapist. So it's a lot.
I guess I want to ask this because I'm really curious. Because a lot more people are talking about health now.
Yeah.
Not enough people are talking about it. But the reason I guess it's been in the mix is because of the after effects that have happened with lockdowns, particularly with those with kids. And you say, in this case, your husband being a clinical psychologist. How has that? What has been the ramifications of what he's seen? Would you consider him being a lot busier lately because of what's transpired over the past 2 years?
I think so. Yeah. Especially when the lockdown first started, he had in April of 2020, when so many people were losing business, he had the busiest record month he'd ever had in his practice, and everybody had gone online, and nobody had conflicts in their schedule, but everybody wanted that connection time. So they, it was a priority that they would meet with him because everybody was stuck at home, and there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. A lot of people really struggled from that, and coming out of that, it's just stayed busy. A lot of times there's kind of the ups and downs depending on seasons, especially around here where Seasonal depression is really high with our long winters, but it hasn't slowed down at all since then. He's stayed very busy.
Yeah, I bet.
Mhm.
Yeah, because when people think of Wyoming, they just think grand open spaces.
Yeah.
And over here, being in the West Coast, people are more in touch with their feelings, if you will. Where any little thing like, oh my gosh, I was murdered today. It's like, what? It's like
Mm,
you don't think about a place that has a lot more free space to roam, that people might be as negatively impacted as, say, as someone that's confined to an apartment and can't even walk down the hall. But
yeah.
the effects, I think that people that don't consider even what's transpired in what are considered the flyover states, if you will,
Mhm.
it has been either a shared experiences or in some cases even worse because of what uh, the the supply chain, how it's affected them and their way of life
Yeah.
versus a place that's always been expensive, which is the big cities on the west and the east coast. And there's always something to be able to get. And I'm like, all right, fine, I can't go, I can't go get my food, so I'm just gonna DoorDash it. I do not think that was something that is in a town of 2,500 people that was easily as accessible as it was here.
Well, I live in a little bit bigger town in Casper where we are. There's more closer to 50 or 70,000 depending on how you look at it. So they did have some of those options. And I will say, being in Wyoming, we had a lot more options for we can we can just go out of town and there's nobody there. And we could still leave
Yeah.
our houses and get to places where we were just alone. And, if we're trying to social distance, we could still do that pretty, pretty well, just because that's the kind of the saying that came out when social distancing became a thing was that Wyoming's been social distancing since 1890 when we became a state because we really do that naturally. So that part of it was for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, but also, my dog. The winters being long though, also on top of like we're stuck at home and winter is 9 months of the year here. Like it snowed last week still. We all had our adjustments that we had to make, whether it was you were in an apartment and you couldn't leave to go in the hallway, or we're stuck where we can't get out of the cold weather when maybe people would have traveled otherwise around that time of year or something. So
Yeah, because there are parts of Wyoming, especially when I think of Wyoming, it's where can I say that Warland is your hometown?
yeah.
Okay, all right. So like when I think of places like around there, whenever I went to Warland, from there it'd always be like a jumping off point for me to either get to Yellowstone, but I gotta go through Cody. And when I think about those places, I think of them as heavily reliant on tourism.
Yeah.
And that was all gone. And I
Yeah.
cannot imagine what that must have done to the local economy there to not receive anything at all. And when I guess the government was sending out funds to help people cover whatever expenses they had, I, as a small business owner, can attest to how difficult it was for even us to get a PPP loan, because companies that didn't need them, particularly in the East Coast, because they were 3 hours ahead of us, they were all getting it versus us. Like, as much as I love and respect him, Tom Brady, do you have the money to run your operation for years to come without a penny from anywhere else? But TB12 Sports ended up getting PPP. Like, meanwhile, the little companies were out holding the bag. And then the so-called summer of love happened, and then things got even worse. So there has been a lot of issues, not just due to the lockdowns, but some of the after effects that transpire with it. Like what I consider people raging out because of things that have transpired, and it was just ripe for the happening. I think it was mid-March, as we were heading into the lockdown here in California, where I declared, it's like, I'm hoping we don't see riots akin to the Los Angeles riots now, specifically citing a racial riot,
Yeah.
because of where I saw our country was going, and
Yeah.
not even 2 months later it happened. So it's to see all that's transpired. So before that, people stuck at home, and then when they ran out of things to do, they just kept shoveling food into their mouth. And if they're in an apartment, they can't do anything. They feel.
No.
And then came the time where like, all right, we're getting out of COVID. Yeah, but now you don't fit through the doorway. And then there were and then there were others that were dealing with the psychological effects, because this is social engineering by social media that makes
Mhm.
you either feel awful about yourself or envy others for their lifestyle. So you have that discouragement because you'll never measure up. So you had physical and mental effects that were happening, not to mention kids that
Mhm.
weren't able to have a proper, I guess what you say, normal childhood, to be confined to a space,
Yeah.
and that did hurt a lot of people, that I knew. And I guess, and to ask you, um how, even though it was Wyoming, I think Rhode Island has a larger population than Wyoming itself, even though territorial wise I think Wyoming is the fourth largest state in landmass
Yeah.
in the continental United States, at least. Like,
Mhm.
but even then, like you said, there were people struggling. Was it a similar experience that you would say, that people still have like health issues despite the fact of the great outdoors?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, we all have people that we know who COVID took from us, or the different diseases. And we still, my boys had to finish out the school year here. And like, when my older son was in first grade, when he had to come home, so he didn't get to finish first grade, and then went like right into second grade. And I still see how that was hard on kids, just to like be pulled out of school, and they lost all the social side, but also a lot of the education that just can't happen when you're not set up for that, just out of the blue. And I think we're still coming out of it. And I think parts of education is better because of it, because now they are equipped to do it from home if they need to. And previously there was no option for that. So in that
That's
way,
true.
it's improved, because when we've had to be quarantined this year for whatever different exposures, my kids still got to have school, and they when
Mm.
it started, but they didn't. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's helpful.
Alrighty, so I switched my headphones out. For those wondering, how did I switch my headphones? Uh, just to avoid some technical issues. So one thing that you touched on, I don't think I've mentioned this before on my program actually, that my kids only missed in-person learning about a month, no more than
Mm.
that.
Wow.
They did go back, a small Christian private school.
Yeah.
They were able to social distance, and maintain, like, just follow the safety protocols, and offer, I guess, at home learning too at the time. So they were able to adjust on the fly, which was pretty awesome. And
Mm.
on top of that, uh, I think uh, what really helped was that, since, like, I expected what was going to happen, that this was not going to leave us. It's just going to be a part of our everyday life. To get down to zero COVID is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even China's extreme cases on trying to get to zero, their zero COVID policy is absolutely insane. So it's just another example of, you're not going to achieve it, so you got to learn to live with it.
Yeah.
So in my case, that's what I assumed, and that's why I told my wife, we will prevail over this. We're not going to let this control us. We will take the precautions that are necessary, and care for those around us. Our kids will go to school.
Yeah.
So that's the long and short of that. And yeah, they didn't miss almost any school. And it was, I guess you
Great.
could say, due to other parents being inspired by us, that eventually, when fall came around and schools opened up, that at first it was like ghost town. There were no kids
Mhm.
coming back, but we were persistent. We kept coming, and the school's buzzing, and it's growing, and it's bigger. And that's what I wanted to see. Like, honey, we need to trailblaze. This needs
Mm.
to. We cannot let this thing defeat us, because if anyone studies any history and will know, it's like, this thing it's here to stay.
Mhm.
So so yeah, that's been one thing. So uh, I know that's where it's been hard on kids, but when it's also been hard on parents, especially if they got to juggle a lot of things as you and your husband do. And it's like, okay, now I got to be teacher, and being teacher, it's like now there's less time. If there were like me time, if you will, there was less of it to none of it. So
Yeah.
then the burnout that people felt was that, okay, I'm exhausted physically, mentally, maybe emotionally, because the kids, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. The kids, you can take them over. They're not going to do their homework. They're not going to eat. They're not going to drink. They're not going to sleep when you tell them to. So it gets exhausting, right? And so then when it comes to being able to take care of someone's health, well, they don't. So when it's like, when they know they have to, when their body tells them like, hey, it's time to do something for your well-being, it's like, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
Well, that's because people forget that nutrition is almost all of it. So like any training program is 80% nutrition, 20% exercise.
Yeah.
And if they slip up, or in my case get injured, and it's hard to, if you're in a bulking phase, for example, it's really hard to switch everything to go into a cutting phase, because your body was conditioned. But it's to know the discipline, know the principles, and get back in it. And that's kind of how we segue to your approach. Can you tell my audience as to what your health journey was before you entered to be this this coach in the style that you're coaching?
Yeah, sure. So I guess my health journey, I really didn't care what I ate for the longest time. And I even though like my sister tended to be more healthy, she's a yoga instructor and eats very clean. But when I had my first son is when I started paying attention to, like, he's like this fresh new little baby and nothing bad has been put into him. Like no, like every piece of food that goes in his mouth, I can now decide what I want to put in him. And you can't control what your kids eat completely, but I started learning about the importance of whole food nutrition, just like to some degree of like how to introduce foods to him to just begin that kind of lifestyle in him from a very early age. And so my shift there for a while was more just focused on more real food and less processed food in general, as I'm raising these humans and I have the opportunity to either teach them to really love all this processed food, all these sugary things that kids are it's just marketed to kids like crazy, or I can help shape their taste buds from an early age so they're not having to try to get over loving Lucky Charms when they're older, you know? And so, but even in that, it's not like we just never had anything processed. Don't get me wrong at all. And so simultaneously, I tend to keep getting older. Like it just keeps happening. And the thing you hear as a woman, and I don't know how much men like hear the same thing about women specifically, but I know you have the ways that your body's changed. But women are like, well, once you've had kids, you'll just never have your body back. You'll never be as little as you were before, or whatever it is. It's not about size, but just you'll never feel the same. And like as we're aging and getting closer and closer to a menopause sort of age, our hormones change. That's how our bodies are. And it was just as I was like 35, 36, things started fitting differently. And I was like, well, I guess this is just what happens when you hit mid-30s, approaching 40, had 2 kids. My clothes just fit differently, and I'm going to have to start buying bigger shirts. And I just need to be okay with it, because that's what everybody kept saying was just body positivity, accept yourself the way you are, you know. And I'm all for body positivity. Like, I want us to love ourselves, but I think in loving ourselves, I've learned how to take care of myself rather than just let myself feel terrible. So that was pre-learning about the faster way to fat loss for me. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, you can. Well, you were on a roll there, but I guess something that you touched on was the whole I guess you could say the peer pressure. That
Yeah.
is a very real thing in society. And when more people, especially in the past 2 years, living their lives in front of a screen, whether it's a monitor, a TV, a phone, or a tablet, or the digital screens at their stations or whatever, there's always something now that is quite literally demanding their attention. And
Mhm.
normally we're hit by I call it propaganda, but some people call it commercials for beverages and foods that are not good for us. But it's like prominently there. It's like Coca-Cola advertises themselves as if no one has ever heard of them. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I don't need
Yeah.
to see 10 ads for it during the commercial break of any sporting event, or you go to the theaters, you're sitting down, you pass the concession stands, but
Mhm.
when you go sit down and then before the trailers start rolling, there's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, look at the attention to detail with how the ice is cracking as the fountain
Uh-huh.
drink lands on it.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah.
okay, honey,
The
I'll be right back.
psychology.
I need to get some. Yeah. It's so, yeah, like that's is a real detrimental effect. Cause like I said, that's why it's mental. Like wellness is all together. It's
Mhm.
mental, spiritual, physical.
Mhm.
And you in a way accepted that until you didn't. What was the point where you said, no, I don't have to be this way?
Well, my coat didn't fit in the winter. I had just
That'll
bought
do it.
like a really nice new winter coat because, as we've discussed, Wyoming winters are long here and it's worth it to invest in a nice coat here.
Mhm.
So I had bought a new winter coat. And as the winter of 2020, moving into the new year 2021, as it was going on, like it was tighter and tighter to zip my coat. And
Mm.
I spent too much money on that coat for it to just not fit anymore.
I'm afraid to
So,
ask.
but that was an indicator for me because I knew my clothes, like I was just having to buy looser shirts and I was like finding a way to like a different style of clothes or bigger pants and things. But when my coat didn't fit, that was kind of like, I don't know, I've heard other people say it's a trigger. My snow pants. I had to buy new snow pants. And I thought, man, I just don't like this. I just don't feel like myself.
Mhm.
And backing up, I had also had a really stressful few years from about 2017, even like then going into COVID, but I had a lot of personally that was hard in like outside of my immediate family.
Mhm.
And stress is a big detriment to our health as well. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
know that was playing in as well. And then I found out I was anemic and I'd never had iron issues even when I was pregnant. I didn't, a lot of people when they're pregnant have anemia come on. So I started taking iron supplements. It was so low that she said if it was any lower, she would have sent me in for like an actual infusion of iron. But
Wow.
we were able to medically I could take iron every day. So I did that until my numbers were better. And then I just kind of quit taking it, which I knew that's not how it's supposed to work. But
Mhm.
okay, so we're at the end of 2020. We went on a trip. My coat didn't fit. I was feeling just like I don't feel like myself, tired, just all the things. And somebody I randomly follow on Instagram started talking about her journey using the faster way to fat loss and how she had kind of felt in a similar way that I was feeling in the way she was describing it. And it had helped her just to get her nutrition back on track and give her a plan for how to just feel better. I wanted to feel better. If I needed to
Yeah.
buy a new coat, I could buy a new coat, but I didn't feel good. And when I looked into it, I knew personally I didn't want to sign up for a program where I'm buying food that somebody else made in a factory because I know that God has given us the food that we need to live a healthy life. Like,
Yeah.
I believe that the Lord provided it all for us. And I didn't want to just any kind of program like that where I felt like it was too manufactured. Here, take this, eat these bars or these shakes or whatever, like as a personal preference. Because I've seen a lot of people do that and find success, but then also it's not always a long-term success. And I didn't want a short-term fix, I guess. And the more I looked into it, the more I saw they just help you find ways to implement whole food nutrition in a way that your body needs and exercise. They give you the exercise 30 minutes a day and pair it with a nutrition plan that makes it effective for weight loss and muscle gain and repairing your hormones and kickstarting your metabolism back up. And I just felt like, yeah, I think this will work. And I never dropped money on any sort of weight loss program before because I just kind of did whatever I did. And when I did, it was like, okay, I'll see. And I might not like this and I might hate exercising, but maybe it'll work. And I'll probably just cancel my membership later. And then it was great. It gave me a plan. It gave me, so I knew exactly what my body needed by tracking macros and not counting calories. Yeah. It gave me 30 minutes a day showing up on my phone of exercise that I knew. Like I have trainers that know what I did last week and they know what I'm going to do next week and they're programming it to move me forward. And I can do it in my basement. I didn't have to leave my family. It was just a quick 30 minutes before my boys are even awake, or even if they are awake, they just hang out with me. And it was just so manageable and sustainable that I just never quit. That's really what happened. Is I thought maybe I'll just try this experiment, and then I never quit. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you took it to the next step.
Yeah,
you became a coach, right?
Yeah. So but I did it for 13 months before I ever considered, or 13 months before I considered being a coach. And I mean, there's opportunities to join as a coach previous, but I didn't want to start trying to get people to sign up for this thing if I wasn't going to be able to continue it. I didn't know personally if I would even keep going. And so I wanted to do it a while. And I honestly never thought I'd be a coach, but just through conversations with my husband, one thing led to another. And I was like, I just kind of need my thing because I love working with him. I love that I can help his counseling practice be successful. And he calls it our practice. I should say our practice, but I mean, he's the counselor. And he's like, well, what if you did something like coaching? And then here we are. Because he said, you've already spent so much time over the last year learning this program. It's been good for you. You've found success and in yourself, and me just gaining energy and vitality. And like, I came back in ways that I didn't know were missing. I didn't know parts of me that were gone. And I was just like, well, I'm just older, but like I came back alive in so many ways, and he could see it too. So that was why I decided it not only would it give me something as a coach to be able to offer people, but I could help people find themselves back even, or maybe they never knew themselves, or maybe it's parts that we didn't know were missing, like myself. And I got my blood work done after I signed up to be a coach, and my iron was normal, and I haven't taken iron supplements in a year and a half.
Awesome.
And I think it's only because of the nutrition that I've increased just eating better, so much better. So that was cool.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's some changes that we make and we start just leaving things out that harm us and just intaking more things that are good for us. Then eventually it's like the whole iron thing. So you don't have to think about it anymore. It's like, oh, look at that. It's like, well, maybe there were some other foods that were depleting the iron instead of adding the iron, or didn't have the iron they said they did, because who's to know that not really a placebo pill, you know? It's like, oh yeah, fortified with this and that. It's like, well, who is really to say? And that's just it. So the only way to know is to eat whole foods and things like that. I love your story. And I love the part that you emphasize too, that it's not about the calories, it's the macros. Because there are a lot of people that follow calories and it's like, oh yeah, this doesn't have that many calories, so I'm going to take this. Yeah, but what you're eating are potato chips.
but not all calories are created equal.
Exactly. It's like, well, this drink only has these many calories. Yeah, but those are empty calories, and all you're drinking
Yeah.
is sugar.
Yeah.
And that's what people, they need counseling on.
Mm.
And in a sense, you found a way to take in your practice with your husband, a way to also extend in a way that you know best how
Mhm.
to counsel people.
Yeah, one of the biggest pieces of the faster way to fat loss is mindset. And I have realized, even in the short time I've been a coach, I've realized how much of what I do is just helping people shift their mindset and going from this like all or nothing, counting calories, I can never enjoy what I eat again kind of mindset, because that's not sustainable. We can't cut out all the good things that we enjoy for the rest of our life. It's not going to last, and eventually we're going to want the food that we used to enjoy. And so it takes an approach of enjoy the food you're eating. We incorporate a treat when we want it, but we don't let that derail us. We're not like, well, I guess all is lost because I ate that brownie at the birthday party. It's
Mhm.
no, tomorrow I just won't eat a brownie, and I'll meet my macros with the whole food that I've learned about through the faster way. And it's not deprivation. And I eat more food now than I ever did
Awesome.
before. I was under eating, not because I was like intentionally starving myself to try to lose weight. I just didn't know. I didn't know what my body needed, and I was under eating so significantly, and my body was holding on to the fat because it wasn't getting what it needed, and it was like a survival that our bodies put into place. And so by not eating enough, we actually gain weight because of that, because we're not giving our body what it needs for the energy and the fuel to get through the day. And it will hold on to whatever you give it, because at least it's getting something that way.
Yeah, and that's exactly what people were shocked when they're like, "Wait, hold on, how'd you get so big?" Like, I only eat twice a day, skip breakfast because like I wasn't a breakfast eater.
Yeah.
And when people find out, like, well, you're not really eating all that wrong when you're having your other meals, you're just at odd times or whatever. And just like you, I learned like, well, the body is like, well, you're not gonna eat, so we need to store it. So that's when so here's something that's interesting, because like, okay, so if we establish that we were under eating, or in my case eating at completely odd hours, how
Mm.
is it that the fasted way works versus my supposed fast, unintentional,
Yeah.
and I gained weight? And I gained the wrong weight. So what makes these two approaches different? Because I think that's what people kind of miss out on. Well, I skip breakfast or whatever.
Skip
Yeah,
breakfast.
but there's still something that you're not doing right versus what is the fasted, or in this case faster way,
Yeah.
to lose weight. Would you enlighten us on that?
So the faster way, we do intermittent fasting, and we fast 16 hours a day and eat for 8 hours a day. We have a fasting window and an eating window. And the reason behind that is that your body actually needs a rest from intaking food so that it can digest all that you've given it. And if you're just constantly giving it more, it's never going to tap into those glycogen and fat stores that you have, because you're just like adding on to the top, right? But if you give your body a break, it will actually be able to digest all of what it has been getting in a just a in ways that it won't if you keep feeding it every few hours. And so we use that combined with carb cycling and macro tracking within that 8 hours. And if I eat all that my body needs to eat in those 8 hours, going 16 hours is easy. But it's the 8 hours of eating that most people usually just think, okay, I didn't eat for all the fasting time, so I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And that's not, our bodies still need specific nourishing habits to be established. And when we carb cycle, we aren't afraid of carbs, but we also know that our bodies are master adapters, and your body will adapt to whatever you're doing. Like we were talking about, when you're under eating, your body's going to adapt, and it's going to hold on to whatever it can. And if you are eating in a specific way, well, your body kind of it gets used to it, and it's going to burn the calories in the way that you're giving it. But 2 days a week, I eat low carb and high fat. And so I'm telling my body, okay, we're going to burn through this today. And then starting Wednesday through Sunday, I eat all the carbs, but I limit my fat. And it's like my body doesn't know what's coming. It's like, oh, what are we going to get today? What are we going to get tomorrow? We're going to get, oh, we're not getting carbs today. So we're going to get all this fat. And we're going to tap into burning between the fat. And then when we're getting all the carbs, we're going to build up the muscle, and we're going to burn those carbs for fuel, because in the days that we're eating carbs, we're strength training, and we're building muscle, because muscle fuels metabolism. And if you don't have muscle underneath the fat you're trying to lose, you won't burn the fat, because there's no muscle to be fueling your metabolism and sparking your metabolism to get started. So it's the combination of the workouts that we're doing with the carb cycling, eating enough by tracking our macros, and making protein. Protein is a huge priority. It's the same every day. So we rotate our carbs and fat, but the protein is always high, and it's always the same. And as someone, I'm from Wyoming. I love me some meat. We always had cows, and I had no clue how under-proteined I was, because I never kept track. And I thought, oh, protein, that won't be that hard. My goodness, it was a huge learning curve how to get in enough protein, and it has made a world of difference.
Yeah, and that has been my the biggest struggle, I could say, with my bulking phases, because with my trainers, my target was anywhere from 175 to 205 grams of protein daily. For someone like me, I'm like, whoa, man, I'm barely hitting 130.
Yeah.
It's like I gotta add up like another 80. It's hard. That's where, in my case, when I take supplements, I supplement with protein shake. I usually get as clean as a protein as possible. I don't like the add-ons or whatever. So the ones that I get tend to be is just whey isolate protein, and if they have one more ingredient, it'll be like either sunflower oil or something else, just to like a preservative. Other than that, it's as clean as it gets, because I need to. And if I don't use that one, I will use a vegan one, and I guess I'm plugging in Tom Brady's TB12 Sports here, but they have some of the cleanest nutrition available on the market, which is why you also pay a premium. But he wants me to go vegan. That's why I'm like, well, what happened to your whey isolate protein, bro? Because no, I still need my whey isolate. So I do use that as a form of supplement. So this morning for breakfast, I had a predominantly green smoothie with a scoop of, in this case, was 20 grams of protein on that shake. So that was my breakfast. But when I work out, my intent is to have anywhere from 40 to 50 grams of protein. And that's inconsistent too, especially if I don't get to do that workout. But the whole thing is in just let's say just two shakes, for example, that would be at most maybe 70 grams of protein. That means I'm still 100 grams short.
Yeah.
And when people are like, oh, I ate this big piece of chicken. Well, if you ate a chicken breast, that's about 35 grams. Like, and I was like, oh, okay. So well, I'm eating this piece of steak. Well, if it's 6 ounces pre-cooked, that thing shrinks. And now the net weight is probably like 4 ounces, and now you're eating less protein than you thought you were. And it's like you said, it's like, dude, so I'm not getting enough protein. No, and that's been my struggle. Not getting enough protein. So it is impressive. I don't know how you're able to squeeze all the protein you need in 8 hours. But
that's probably one of the biggest things we hear is like, how do I eat this much food, just in general, but also within an 8-hour window? And personally, I can't get hungry. If I get hungry, I know I'm going to be behind in being able to get enough food by the end of my 8-hour window. And so I just keep whatever the snacks that I have already figured out I'm going to eat for the day, or shakes, or I have people who work and they bring all their food with them to work, or if you're home, either way, it takes planning. And If I get hungry, then I know at 7:45, I'm going to be like, I haven't eaten enough yet, and it's also, though, it's never going to be perfect. And if I need to eat a little bit longer, I do. I mean, it's not a mindset of perfection. It's just progress, because every decision that we make in the direction of having better health and achieving our health goals, it adds up. The consistency is what adds up. It's not 4 days of being highly motivated and then just quitting. It's the consistency over time, making that progress, knowing that we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to meet it every day exactly right on, but I'm doing better than I was 18 months ago because of those small habits that have been built up.
Yeah. And I'm glad you say it's not a strive for perfection. It's basically a strive for consistency.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get really caught up in feeling that they're failures because they didn't do it this way or that and in that window or whatever. And that goes for just about anything. I missed a workout today or yesterday, so I'm not going to work out the rest of the week. No, that's the opposite of what you should be doing. Get back on the high horse and keep moving, or else 1 week goes by, then 2 weeks go by and you still haven't done it, then 3 weeks, then a year's passed by. It's like, that's why I get upset because many people, and I think this is, I don't know if it's an American thing, us culturally, or it's just a human habit. It's that, oh, it's Thanksgiving, so from Thanksgiving to Christmas, I'm going to eat whatever I want, and for the New Year's, I'm going to make it my goal to lose the weight. Well, we're approaching Thanksgiving. Did you lose the weight that you said you're going to lose the previous year? It's that, no, I didn't. So in other words, you keep net gaining. When are you losing? You're not. So we're just ballooning and ballooning and ballooning. And a little bit of the whole body positivity thing is that, knowing that this is your body and you got to take care of it because the body that God gave you, this is our temple. But now we're being told that, no, you're okay. You're beautiful and brave being dangerously obese, morbidly obese, super unhealthy. And now we're being told that that's the new healthy, that go to doctors that are, what do they call, fat allies or something like that. It's like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. It's like all these crazy terminologies and to make them sound like it's more nuanced or smarter. It's like, no, your body's telling you have diabetes. It's not a feeling, so it's something that's psychological. And it's huge. So like it goes back to the mindset thing. It's all about the war in the mind, and until we overcome this, the rest is not going to fall into place because it's all a mind game. And that's how it was for me when I went on my weight loss journey. My triggering point was the one I knew was going to happen, because for probably just about as long as you've known me, I've had back issues. But it was around January 2004, which was the first time I woke up feeling that someone was stabbing me in my lower back. I pinched my sciatica. I woke up screaming from bed, and I'm like, this is awful. So Mr. Fredrickson waking up from the bed in the movie Up every morning and snapping us back into place, that was literally me. It's like, oh, well, I guess I have an old body, so I might as well think like an older person too. I just felt more mature beyond my age, not because I was mature, but because my body was aching. Like I had an old body. But that was just due to injuries from sports and in work and all the stuff that to me, like, I'm not gonna go to the doctor. They're gonna tell me what I already know what's wrong with me. Like, yeah, but you didn't really take care of yourself. Now there's more to also why I didn't mind living the way I lived, that I'm not gonna share on this one. I'm saving it for a special episode, but I'll tell you once we're done recording. Okay. That I didn't mind being that way. But then when there's milestones in life, high school graduation, university graduation, and then getting married, that was like, all right, let me just put off some weight so I can look good in the suit. That was it. Good for pictures. So yeah, I could do it if I wanted to. It's just that it wasn't sustainable for me as a lifestyle. So I knew that my tipping point was going to come when I wasn't going to be able to move to play with my son. So my then 1-year-old son wanted to play with me, and I was on the floor. I couldn't move. My back was just beyond. By that point, I had 2 pinched nerves, and my doctor told me that my back was being held by duct tape. So it's like, you gotta lose the weight. And I can't play with my son. So that was my triggering point. I put up with the pain, but then at that point, I was like, I can't play with my son. this is impossible because now I got a third on the way. So I'm like, okay, I need to put off the weight. So by then, I needed to do something about it, and I did. And it was a mental shift. Like I prepared myself for about a month before I dove straight in. So in 1 month, I had dropped 5 pounds, but it wasn't fast enough for me because I'm like, my third child's gonna be here by the end of summer. No, by fall. So like I needed to like speed this up. So I entered a weight loss program with a friend of mine, a coach. As a matter of fact, it's a mutual friend of ours, Priscilla. So so she was offering this to me a year earlier, and my wife said it's no go. Because like no, you should be eating whole foods and stuff like that. My wife's healthy and she cooks, but she can't keep up with the cooking as in a chaotic lifestyle.
It's
So
hard.
it's like I told her, let me do something that I can control. Okay, I don't want to be dependent on anybody else right now. Let me do something I can control. And then she saw it for what it was, and it was I lost 80 pounds in 3.5 months. So then like, to her, it's like whoa, and Priscilla didn't even have to coach me. I told her, look, I'll just report back to you. Because the goal was to eat like anywhere from 12 to 1400 calories. I was averaging 850. And it's like, but that's dangerously low. Believe me, I have plenty stored that my body seems going to use up. and it did. So yeah, I was critically low in calories, and I don't think people should do it the same way I did. But that's just how serious I was. And honestly,
Yeah.
I was eating that clean because like, wait, you're eating a full chicken breast, two handfuls of spinach, and you're still getting carbs. Yes. And yet somehow you're still eating 850 calories. Yes, because I'm not adding oil. I'm not adding all these other things that just like pump up the calories. It's just that when you take it to its basics, 130 calories perhaps for chicken breast, grill it, boom, there you go. It's like maybe you cook some of the calories out, but the point is that you can control these things. So for me, it was that. And then afterwards, it was like I wanted to lose the weight first and then shift into fitness. My cravings didn't kick in until I started doing fitness. So that's like, oh man, this is harder. But I was eating 4,000 to 5,000 calories daily and still losing weight and gaining lean mass.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. It's injured myself. So that's when I got back on it, I had to eat half of that. And it's just re-injuries along the way. It's a lifestyle, and I'm not giving up. I'm just keeping going because that's all you can do, really.
Yeah.
But it's getting the principles in place. And even if I lose muscle, there's a beautiful thing called muscle memory. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome that I could still do this. And the muscles come back. It's like, hey, you're working again. Yeah, because I can. But it has been a learning process along the way where I'm like a sponge. I learn from a lot of different things. So I have done fasted. I have done different carb cyclings. I have done shake only diets and things like that. But that's all for maintenance. A lifestyle is like, I eat 6 times a day, 3 meals, 3 snacks, and I try to keep myself portioned, fueled along the way. I don't want to get hangry because then I'm going to eat.
Yeah.
And pizza is the bane of my existence because the only thing that could trip me up. But other than that, it's like trying to maintain that the principles really. And if I screw up, I'm not beating myself for it. It's like, all right, get back on it and do it better tomorrow. But a lot of people, they just throw in the towel, they give up. That's why these New Year's resolutions only last like until January 10th or whatever it is. And then it's like, yeah, I give up. Or I say, you haven't even started. So yeah, it is that. And I'm glad you shared that. But I must also say, for the length that I've known you, that's why I guess I was taken aback. It's like, hold on, she's doing what? Like, but I never knew you to be overweight. I've always known you to be slender, slim. So that's why it's like, no, it's like you and Shirley. It's like it was never like I never saw her as the fat one. So that's why I'm like, you're doing this. So that is it is possible to be what is called skinny fat. And do you feel you also suffered from that you were skinny fat because you didn't have the muscle? Because muscles help you with your metabolism, as you say, and energy and endurance. But even being slim, people can be skinny fat because they're just filled with fat but not muscle, right?
Yeah, and I think my arms naturally have muscle. Like people would always be like, do you work out? I'm like, no, literally all I do is pick up my kids. Like I don't like to work out.
Sandbag, kettlebell.
My arms kind of have tone and they don't build fat. So that, full disclosure, is true. But where I saw it was in the place, like in the midsection and the hips, which is where women tend to put it on the most. And so as my and men, but as my hormones started to change and as I'm getting older, my metabolism just slowed down. And so, yeah, I was always known. I mean, I've never had a big weight problem, and that's why I've just never really had to try the different programs. Like some people have tried them all, like you're saying, or, but I didn't feel like myself in like the ways that my body was holding on to weight. Like I wasn't familiar with, and that's honestly one of the struggles that I had with like, how could I be a coach? I've always just been the skinny one. People are just going to look at me and say, she's always been small. This program can't be that incredible because she's always been small. She didn't have any weight to lose. And I mean, you can say that, but I've lost weight and I've lost inches and I've gained strength and energy and I'm repairing my body. And so even though I'm not of the physical physique that just gained a lot of weight, I wasn't healthy on the inside. I just could fake it. Yeah. But I would do things like going on a hike, and it was like, oh, she must be in good shape. She's smaller. She obviously, her arms are strong, so she must work out. But I could, like, the hikes were hard because inside I was not healthy, and I wasn't doing the things to nourish myself and move my body. I never moved my body. I did not like to work out. I had no interest in it. And I pretty much signed up for the faster way. And I thought, well, I'll adjust my food, but I probably won't do the workouts. And that changed because I saw that it was effective and I actually enjoy them because it's not hours of cardio. It's not like torture. It's 30 minutes and 3 days a week, I'm strength training, which I really enjoy. And I never knew. I didn't know that about myself. You might learn something new about yourself if you try something different. You never know. But yeah, I guess I've had to realize I do have something to offer, even though I've never maybe walked the same journey of gaining weight like other people. But that doesn't mean that nutrition and making healthier choices is not effective for anybody. I mean, anybody who decides they're going to make better choices for their body is going to benefit from it, I think.
Yeah, they would. And I think that's actually a really good way to end it on that note.
Yeah.
So where can people learn more about you and the program that you're coaching on now?
Probably the best way to find me is on my Instagram, and it's charity.and.wellness. And that's ANN. There's no E. But on that page, there's links to my different rounds. We start the program starts with a 6-week round of like learning how to live the faster way. And then with the option to continue on in the membership. And by signing up, you get meal plans, you get coaching from me. There's accountability. There's daily workouts that come straight to your phone. It's all right in your phone. And then I get to walk with you, give you my tips and tricks that I've learned, and just kind of help you with that mindset shift to this is actually a forever thing that we're changing and not just a quick fix mindset. So charity.and.wellness.
Yeah. And for those of you listening on the podcast, you know the MO. All these links will be available at the show notes of this episode at www.segovia.com. And you send me every link that you have, Charity, and I'll be putting it there for the show notes for everybody to get. And so for those of you watching the video platforms, go to the show notes to accompany this episode, and you'll find it there. Thank you, Charity, for sharing your story here and reconnecting on this too. But yeah, it was something for me to see. Like, did she just open another Instagram? So you follow this account, wellness. Then I gotta talk to her because
Thank you.
I'm really glad to hear that because my wife before we got pregnant again, was doing a fasted approach, and she
Mhm.
was enjoying it
Mhm.
because, like, honey, it's just for you to get more energy, like to get back into being physically active and things like that. Because she was always on the skinny side, and now it's
Mhm.
the fourth baby. But the thing is, when you see my wife and when you see my brother's wife, uh, people are like, wait, you guys are moms? It's
Yeah.
like yeah, and all these came from these two, like all these kids. It's like, well, that's crazy. Yeah, they really have different approaches to how they maintain their weight thereafter.
Mhm.
And some of it's actually kind of cultural. With my wife being Taiwanese and stuff, there's actually a nutritional program tailored to Taiwanese Chinese people
Mm.
for the recovery period, and then transitioning back to trying to eat, I guess, the clean way they will eat. They're very heavy on the soups and stuff. People just think noodles, but and rice. No, it's a lot of soup. I never seen people eat so much soup. I'm like, dude, I usually have as an appetizer. It's like that's not my main food.
Yeah.
But it helps because you get all the flavors in a place, and next thing you know, it's like, hey, you know what? This wasn't as it's filling, and it's
Mhm.
not fatty. Oh, I
Mhm.
guess depends on what you throw in there. But yeah, I just thought I'd say that because I was very acquainted with approaches that like your program. But on that note, thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
me
Andy.
on the program, Charity. I'd love to do
Mhm.
this again
Yeah.
soon enough. So yeah, we'll be talking.
Okay, sounds good.